All right, we are live. Yeah, tell us where you're coming from. Seeing a lot of people back. Lita from UK, Toronto. We got UK and Canada right off the bat. Chicago, Nasreen, Sally, coming back. Debbie.
Oh, to-do list. Good.
Annie, thank you. Nikki, hello again. Mary Beth, Tracy, join us again.
God, this is so fun to see everybody's names. I love this, especially now since I feel like I've seen people over and over.
I know. Yeah, right. We're seeing some repeats and and it's fun a lot of people are reconnecting with each other. You know, these are people who would be at a lot of the conferences we would be doing throughout this spring anyway.
Yeah.
Keith, Portland. Oh, I love Portland.
So do I.
Amy Lou, thanks for coming. Sheila, Greg, Kristen, hello.
Kristen, hi.
Pencils 321. Pencils, I forgot your actual name. You're from California, though.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Damn it! I just talked to you yesterday.
I know. She connected with us on Twitter, right?
I don't know, Sheila. I just my head is a little bit mushy right now.
Yeah.
Hi, this is my first class. I'll have to go
Jody,
back.
thanks for coming. Yeah, watch the earlier ones. They're up.
Yeah.
Lisa. Oh, Michelle. Michelle was Pencils. Trisha, thanks for coming. Hey, Samantha. Yeah, and before we forget, thank you hello also to all of the people watching the replay. So we're not forgetting about you.
Nope.
And
groan. Did you hear him just groan? He just went.
No, it's a hard life.
He's like, I'm so sick of you talking about books. Shut up about your books, Ann.
It's better than you leaving him all the time to go talk about books.
Oh God.
Yeah, Peanut.
I don't remember those days. They're a past terrible memory. He'll write a memoir someday about it. My life as a neglected pup.
Neglected.
How the co-virus made me happy.
By Peanut. Hey, Heidi. Hello to Peanut, says Sandra. All right, I think we can get started pretty soon because I'm going to start with just some reiteration of the past couple sessions, and then we'll get into it. And we were just talking before we started the whole broadcast that we're both a little nervous for this because we purposely, as I kind of said in my newsletter, we purposely held ourselves back from planning this out because we really wanted this to basically be us thinking out loud and sort of having a live session of coming up with an idea and kind of critiquing it as we go. So we really don't know what's going to happen here, except for we do have a takeaway, and we do have, we obviously have the stuff from earlier that I want to reiterate. But Krista, thanks for coming. Christine, Maggie, here again. Peanut is featuring more prominently.
He is upset. Like he really wants to make eye contact through this whole thing.
Eye contact is important for some dogs.
He is the hardest date I've ever had.
Okay, so we'll dive right in, and let's see. I'm going to do this for now, just so we can see this up front, so it's big enough. So reiterating the previous session, we have discussed creating a short synopsis. That's what we did our first session. Synoption is the portmanteau of synopsis and session. That should be a word in some world, but we discussed creating a short synopsis for several story ideas and running them by people to see which one seems to garner the most interest from people. So this was sort of an imitation of what Anne did with her agent, where she wrote 5 of these and sent them off to her agent, and her agent ranked them. So you can do that even if you're agentless, and lean on some friends and critique partners and see if they can help you out. We recommended writing a brief 150 to 200 word synopsis, sometimes called a back cover synopsis. It's also essentially the hook synopsis you would have in a query letter. It hooks the reader, but it doesn't give away the whole story. There are some types of synopses that really are spoilers for the entire thing. This is a very brief, getting us interested in the story, but not revealing what happens. But just giving some teasers. And then we discussed writing forward from this, is what we did last time, writing forward from the character, not from the premise. And we talked about the importance, and we're going to really enact a lot of that today again. But we talked about the importance of figuring out the character, who's the best one to have as your POV character, your perspective character, experiencing the events in the story. So yeah, that's what we've gone over so far in the last couple sessions. And so now what we're doing is figuring out, okay, we have a premise, we have a character, and how do we turn that into an actual story rather than just a plot or a series of events? Because there's a difference between a plot and a story. And so we don't want them to just experience things and stuff, but we want them to have the events that they experience actually be pushing them and moving them in some way. So that's what we're coming to. And I'll sort of preview this, but we had gone over these 5 questions, and I'll kind of leave this up and then maybe come back to this one so you can see the two of us. And so I'll sort of leave that up as the questions that were kind of driving how you decide who this is going to be about, deriving the premise and the character. And these are the 5 questions that we had presented last time in terms of figuring out, by way of figuring out who your character might be. So we'll get going then with this. And the idea here is that Anne stumbled upon an idea. She stumbled upon this idea, and we talked about this idea, and we even initially started like saying, okay, but it could be this and then we stopped ourselves and said, okay, but let's save this for the actual session, so we're not just repeating something we've already gone over. We want it to be kind of fresh for this session. But tell us a little bit about this idea, Anne.
Okay, so I got a text message from a friend who sent me a photograph, and the photograph was a bag of, it looked like garbage, but it wasn't garbage. It was food, like deli food, unopened, nestled between 2 garbage bins at the bottom of his apartment building. So he's up, it's an old apartment building. There's a couple of floors up, and there's this garbage bag down there. And then he said, I know who drops it off. It's a 70-year-old lady in a blue Honda. I don't know why she does it. She's been doing it for a while. It's very random. And then just recently, like right after he told me that, he goes, she did it again. And this time it was a recycle bag. There were 2 bottles of wine. One was open, one wasn't. There was cookie biscuits in it, like food, like cookies, and some other thing, like cheese or something. And he said that he heard a door shut and he looked out the window, and it was the same woman in the same car. And that's it. So I couldn't make a story out of that.
Yeah.
And so immediately my brain is like, who did that? Why did she do that? This is a good idea for a story. Why would someone do that? Did they think it was garbage? Is it dementia? But they're driving. What's the situation?
And it's a repeat thing, and they're clearly not, they're not putting them in the dumpster. They're not
putting it in the dumpster, but they're putting it next to the dumpster. So it's not in the dumpster. So it's purposeful.
It's purposeful. It's next to the dumpster. It's stuff that is only partially consumed.
Or not consumed. No. Like some of it is not, because one time there was like a bag of popcorn, like Skinny Pop or something that wasn't opened. Yeah. Wow. So my first thought was, before even thinking about it, I go, oh, clearly someone's having an affair and they're having a picnic and they don't want to bring home the remnants to their house because their husband would see it. And so instead of bringing it home, she dumps it at the dumpster, but then also she's frugal enough to think to herself, well, somebody should enjoy this, so doesn't throw it out. That was my first thought.
Yeah, because they are basically like party items almost.
They are. They're kind of party items. They're sort of like a picnic.
Stuff you'd have on a picnic or like while watching Netflix.
Yeah. Yep. So then I thought, so here's the question, right? And so here we kind of go through these same questions. Like, when did you first think I have an idea for a book? Well, that's kind of an idea for a book. Why is it an idea for a book? Well, it's absolutely firmly cemented in, why do you care, Anne? Like someone would walk past that or see that and go, huh, the lady missed the dumpster, and then go on their way. You know, some people don't make movies in their head when they see a leaf on the ground. They just kick it out of the way and go on their day. But I'm like, what is that?
Certainly, the other thing that elevates it is that it's a repeat pattern.
Yes. It's
like if it happened once, it would be like, well, she was too lazy to throw it away.
Yeah, her arm hurt and she couldn't lift the lid or something.
Right.
But it's happened frequently, like many. So, so then I think, okay, so why do I care about this? Well, I care because it is a pattern. And I think that's an interesting behavior that I haven't seen before. It's certainly nothing I do.
Yeah.
And I can attribute all kinds of thoughts of personality about who would do that kind of thing. So one of it is it a dementia situation? One of it is it a frugal situation? Is it a sneaky situation? And the woman was 70. So so I'm thinking to myself, well, you're kind of being ageist, Anne, if you don't think it's a romance. But I don't right away go to, it's a romance.
What would be a romance? That she's like leaving this for someone she's in love with, you mean?
Oh, I mean, I was thinking originally that, you know, she didn't want to bring it home because she was worried her husband would see it. But what if it was?
Oh.
What if it was that? What if the person that she was leaving for, there was something about that? Like, and maybe that person doesn't even live there anymore. And then on the anniversary, like every Tuesday when they had a picnic together, he lived there at the place, at the apartment maybe. So, and so maybe it's some kind of a homage, like I used to do this all the time. Except it still doesn't sort of make sense, because if he doesn't live there, then he's not going to retrieve it. And what are you doing? That's weird. So then I started thinking, maybe it's not the story of the woman leaving the thing. Maybe it's the story of the person who's watching the lady leave the thing.
And like, why they're so captivated by it.
Why are they so captivated? Maybe it's the story of why I'm captivated about it. And so what if the story is about the person that's up in the apartment and they see that and right away they think to themselves, I wish somebody would leave me a little basket. Well, who's a person that doesn't have them? Somebody leave them a little basket. Well, you know, me, like nobody leaves me a little basket. But like, you know, you could build out this whole piece of the person that lives in the apartment and doesn't leave very often, right? And maybe she's somehow compelled in the night then to go down and see what's in there. Like maybe this is the thing that gets her out of her house to see what's in that basket. And maybe the basket is for her, but maybe it's not. And like, there's so many reasons, like, right? Because it could be that the basket is for her.
Oh,
And she
yeah.
has to figure out who this woman is to her. And if she's a person that can't leave the room for whatever reason, agoraphobic or whatever, then she can't run down and get her, right?
Hmm.
So how does she figure out what this woman's story is? And so, like, for me, like, I think it might be interesting. Like, I might look out the window and go, okay, there's that person leaving that thing again. They've done it every Tuesday for the last thing, and walk away. But if I finally got my courage up to go down and see it, and I saw that it was for me, that wraps me into the story. It wraps our character into the story and increases our interest in the story, because now we've intersected these two situations. And it's not a coincidence that, because it's purposeful. This woman left it for her. Now, if it was a basket over in the park somewhere and it happened to be for her and she happened to see it before somebody else did, that's a coincidence. That's not what we want to do with the story. We want to make it more purposeful. So what would you do? How would this character then, through what we believe is her personality, go about solving the puzzle of who this lady is that's leaving these things for her? What kind of a person is she? Is she the kind of person that would open her window and shout? Is she the kind of person that would, set up a surveillance camera? Is she the kind of person that is good with tech and she's checks out the license plate and goes in that direction? And then what are the possible reasons for this woman dropping it off? Maybe this woman has a relationship with her that this other woman doesn't know. Maybe she's, who knows, a long lost mother and this girl never knew she was adopted. Maybe she is, I don't know, her piano teacher that always thought that she had promise, and she learned that she's an agoraphobic and never left the house. So there's a couple of things happening here. We're trying to figure out what is the most interesting relationship.
Yeah.
And
So I have a question. If we go with the observer as kind of the protagonist, right? And it's her story about trying to figure this mystery out. Then there's a question of, okay, should the items be for her or should the items not be for her?
Right.
Because they could, I mean, if they are, then obviously the woman leaving them has some intent that the story will be about trying to uncover that intent, right?
Oh, yeah. So what if Maureen says here, don't assume that the person in the window is female, and you absolutely don't have to. But
right.
But I just thought of something like, what if she has left it for the person that used to live in that apartment?
And okay, so it's mistakenly, so
yeah,
it ends up being left for our observer, but was intended to be left for someone else.
Yep. And maybe there's a note in it, or maybe there's a thing, and she starts to feel responsible. Maybe there's something in there that she wants, but she's like, I can't take it. It was meant for someone else. How do I let this woman know that it was meant for someone else? So for me, like we all write different stories and we all find out things that are interesting for different reasons.
Yeah.
So if I drill down into the kind of book that I write, which is important, because like if you write magical realism, it's going to be a really different story idea. If you write historical fiction, it's going to be a different thing. If you write thriller, completely different thing. But I write funny and sad.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And there's some people in the comments already saying like Rear Window, Woman in the Window. Like there's definitely, this could for sure lead to like psychological thriller area, right?
Yes.
But that's not really what you write. So you're thinking in terms of tragicomedic something, right?
Yeah. Like, like for me, what would be in the bag would be like a bottle of wine, some cheese, a vibrator, and some hair gel. And, I would be like, who would put those things together, and then that character would emerge, right? So,
right.
like you're allowed to put whatever you want in that bag, right? This is just a premise of a bag dropped off somewhere.
Yeah.
It could also be, it doesn't have to be a woman. It could be a man dropping something off, right? For a woman, or a man dropping something off. It's like the gender doesn't matter. It can be anything, because we get to pick. You don't have to stay. This is just a premise.
Right.
And so if I change, like for Ann Garvin, who writes Funny and Sad, you know, the stuff that's in the bag is going to be some really unusual mix of things, and probably something dirty, like a vibrator, right? And then, I mean, dirty. I mean, come on, Ann. So, but like, then, you know, then there is all these very funny moments where the woman is thinking to herself, oh, this is like a woman who is on a romantic picnic, and then she pulls out, you know, handcuffs, and she's like, maybe not. Or, you know, like a bong or something, and then she's like, well, so, and then you build out the character in a way that you can build it, you know, with whatever it is that you want to do.
Right.
So, like when I was writing about, when I was writing in the dog year, I had a character called, his whole name was Stuart from Frozen Foods. And he was just a man who worked in frozen foods at the grocery store. And he was secretly in love with the protagonist, and he was very earnest about his frozen lasagna. And he always wanted to have her over to his house because he made a fancy salad with cheese. And nobody's definition of a fancy salad is a salad with cheese. But you know? And so, so those things, those little details are personality details that are very important when you're building out the character and what they want.
Right.
So, for example, if it's me, if the story is about me or a woman in the window looking down and watching this, secretly, what do I want? Secretly, I want an escape from my apartment or my life. Even if I'm not agoraphoric, I'm only interested in that mysterious bag if I deem it as mysterious. So what kind of person, besides a writer, is super interested in this mysterious bag at the bottom of a staircase? Well, it could very well be somebody who spends their life online working quietly at home and doesn't have anything out of the ordinary. And then all of a sudden, every Tuesday, a bag shows up with any number of things. And every time I would change what's in that bag. And it would be super funny and dumb, you know?
Right.
And my character, for sure, would come up with all kinds of ways to try to catch the person. And then eventually they would catch him. But then she would have to figure out how she was going to ask the questions about the bag.
Yeah.
And what that bag meant. And the only reason it's interesting is how it is going to change my character with regards to what she wants and what her story arc is. Why would it take a bag hidden at the bottom of the stairs to get this woman out of her room? Well, it could be that she's not going to get lured from her room because she's incredibly shy. And so, you know, like if somebody stood there and said, I got a bottle of wine, she'd be like, oh no. But if somebody puts it down there in a bag, it sort of makes me think of like how you might get a squirrel, catch a squirrel. You have to hold that nut very gently and not move too fast to lure that person out.
Yeah.
So the answer of who is the person dropping off the bag is only can be answered if you know who the character is that's interested and why they're dropping off the bag. So,
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So if the person is shy and that person is luring them out for whatever reason, and that person and my person that's interested, there's a reason for her interest. So we have to figure out what that interest is.
Yeah.
And it can be, it's like we said last time, the goofier the better. Because if you think of something super goofy, you can bring it back down to life.
Right. Yeah. Was it was it Maggie? Maggie, was it you who was quoting Margaret Atwood? The goofier, the better for the premise. Yeah, that definitely. Goofy's really good, for sure. And we kind of mentioned this, I think, pretty soon, where we talked about Goofy's good, but then, you want to walk it back to something that's emotionally resonant, right? And that relatable. It was me, Maureen. Thanks. And there's some really good questions coming up in here.
Yeah,
Kristen says, person in the apartment would have to be agoraphobic, otherwise she'd go downstairs to meet her, right? Yeah, you do have to figure out, like, why would this be a genuine problem?
Mm-hmm.
Why couldn't this just be solved by her leaning out the window and saying, hey?
Mm-hmm.
And then Kristen asked, why at the dumpster and not in front of the apartment door?
Right.
There's some intention to this.
Absolutely.
Right. You do have to figure these out, because otherwise you're going to run into all sorts of plausibility issues, and where the whole story kind of comes crumbling down because there's some very weak brick in the foundation.
Exactly. So then Maggie says she lost a child years ago and there's something in the bag that relates to the child. Right. Maybe that child lived in that apartment and she still thinks he does. Or maybe that child was lost and there is something in there, but then we have to connect why she would leave it at the dumpster and not throw it away. Wait, isn't it funny? Like if she was like, if all of a sudden she stumbled on this little Zoom thing, she'd be like, I just couldn't lift the garbage thing. It was heavy.
Right. Right.
She'd be like, what? Maybe
some very mundane reason.
Or maybe she can't come down because she's in quarantine.
Exactly. Well, I do think that this is a big part of why this story premise is resonating with you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there's a disconnect, right, between the observer and the person outside doing this mysterious thing, and we can't currently just lean out the window and say, I mean, we could do that, but we can't like go down and face them and say, what are you doing? So
let's do this. Okay, so let's just say we're going to make the person agoraphobic, okay, and shy. So those things probably come together, but like a shy agoraphobic who works inside her place. And so what does she spy in that bag that's interesting enough for her to creep down a fire escape to look into? Because what's got to get her out? Because if you just saw the bag and you saw a lady doing it and you're agoraphobic, you'd be like, yeah, I'm agoraphobic. I'd like to know what's in there, but I'm not going down in there. So you have to get her out. So there has to be something in it that she sees and goes, oh, wait, what's that? And it has to be big. So she says, is there enough here to formulate a whole novel? Well, I saw somebody shoplift in TJ Maxx and I wrote a whole novel.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just make it up.
Yeah.
This is a premise. So that's why I say that. I think you just have to have a huge imagination for, what you're interested in. And so, like, for example, let me think about that. So if I'm an agoraphobic and I don't want to go out of the house, but what is it that so for example, if the woman knows she's up there, she knows what it is that gets her. So what is the one thing that this woman lost by being an agoraphobic that makes her so sad that she can't just order from Amazon that she wants? Oh, what if the first bag is a box and it's an animal. Like there are air holes in it.
Yeah.
Maybe there's air holes
Somebody
in it.
even recommended that in the comments. Yeah,
Oh,
it moves, a puppy. Yeah.
good. Oh, good. Sorry. I must have just stolen that from you by
No, that's good.
by osmosis. So yeah, like, and it moves.
Yeah.
And so that's when she's like, oh, I can't, and tomorrow's garbage day.
Right.
Like maybe garbage day is gonna happen and this box is down there and it's moved. And maybe it's the summer and she can hear it crying.
Right.
So maybe there's different things she leaves. Maybe a bag sometimes. Maybe if this woman is trying, she's like, well, I put wine out there the first time and that didn't get her.
Yeah.
And when I put this out the next time and that didn't get her, I'm putting a puppy out here.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a note around the puppy,
Right.
Or maybe the puppy garners enough trust that she starts to be more interested in what the bags are and she starts to see them as gifts for her. And maybe the woman above didn't mean them for her. She actually meant them for the other person.
Yeah. I think that's a huge thing to explore with this is it an intentional leaving of the items targeted toward the observer or not? And I don't think it has to be. I think a story can, we talk a lot about like avoiding coincidence in story, but I think a story can start in coincidence. It just can't be propagated forward by coincidence.
Or a misunderstanding. Those are the two things I think that,
Definitely. Yeah.
That's kind of a straw man design. We want it to be a little bit stronger than that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But if it started with, she sees this out there, she's curious about it, she isn't agoraphobic, she doesn't leave often, but maybe she waits until 2 a.m. and she goes out there and peeks in it after seeing this woman drop it off, 4 times or something.
And maybe she leaves 3 of the first bags. She doesn't go get the first 3 bags.
Yeah, exactly.
She's like, yeah, I want to see what that is, but not that bad.
Right.
And then eventually, she gets it. And maybe it's, we don't know. Like if you're going to write a love story, maybe it's a man, maybe it's, we don't know about that. But here's how we make that decision. What is our protagonist's biggest desire? How is she? And her biggest desire is, I want to stay in my place and be left alone.
Right.
Because that's what she's been doing.
So then how is this thing, intentional or not, going to push against that desire?
And so she gets the puppy and she brings it upstairs. Well, puppies need to go out.
Oh, right.
So it's actually the perfect nudge. So maybe and they have to eat. And they have to eat. And so, maybe but that's just so if she wants, so she can probably figure some of that out, right? So then the person that's trying to flush her out has to come up with something more, like has to push her even more. Or they have to meet.
Right.
See what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I think, I guess the other considerations are, are you subconsciously like we borrow story ideas all the time, right? But are you subconsciously sort of like just kind of ripping off another story? And I'm not saying we are yet. I'm not confident yet that we are, but I am thinking like, because it occurred to me at some point, like, Boo Radley and like the recluse who's inside, and how do you lure them outside? How do you, because there's that Boo Radley sort of connection between him and Scout and Jem via these gifts left in the knothole of the tree, right?
Yeah.
So there's a certain, and there are other stories where there's like a writer recluse who never leaves, who makes some sort of connection with somebody outside. Now, I don't think those are often told from the point of view of the recluse, so maybe that's fine. But so yeah, I do think though, as we're talking this out, I do think it's a more interesting story from the point of view of the person who's the observer than the person who's leaving the bag.
I do too, because it's, yes. And we have, like, so maybe her largest desire is to stay in, but maybe
Right.
she's got an even bigger desire to actually want to be out in the world.
And that's really good, because when you have, and I think Robert McKee talks about like conscious desire, unconscious desire,
Mhm.
that the conscious desire is this thing that you want openly, but the unconscious desire is what you haven't admitted to yourself that you actually want.
Mhm.
And it has to be the opposite of the conscious desire.
Right. And so on some level, she's an agoraphobia, and that forces her this to be inside. But
Right.
I don't think agoraphobics want to be a slave to that.
Right. Right.
They want to go out and have the world that the rest of the world has, for the most part, probably. I mean, in some level, they'd be like, no, 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 because I have a panic attack every single time. So no, I don't want to do that. But if
Right.
you said to them, if someone magically removed your panic attack, would you go out in the world? And they'd be like, hell yeah. So that means that it's not, it is a different, it's a tug of the desire.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
in the dog year, the woman wanted her husband back more than anything in the world. And she wanted, but that obviously cannot happen. So that simply cannot happen.
Yeah. Right.
Right? And so you have to have another desire to move the story forward, because if
Yeah.
that was the only desire, she'd kill herself, or I don't know what she would do, really.
Yeah.
It's impossible. So that'd be a different character.
Right. Right.
So when we say that you have to mine a person's desires, you have to mine them so that you not only get their obvious desire, I want to stay in my house and just do my work and let me alone, and I don't want to be bugged by anybody, versus another desire of, I'm lonely.
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
actually kind of lonely.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And that starts to make it really compelling.
Yeah. Maggie says could we do two POVs? You absolutely could.
Yeah, for
Definitely
sure.
could. It'd be really interesting if you did that.
Yeah.
And then you have like parallel stories, because you have off the page, then you're doing like third person, usually, not always, but and you have people off the page living their lives and then coming together. Yeah.
Yeah.
So look at, she's a homicide detective on medical leave with PTSD.
Yeah.
Flutter into a body part coming out of a bag. Yeah, okay. Yes, that could be the case.
Yeah.
Which is really different from her just being up in the room being lonely.
For sure.
Katie
Right.
Moretti always says, I don't know how you writ your lady books. She goes, with people who are just like lonely and sad. She goes, if I don't kill somebody, I don't know what to do. So
yeah, I do want to say there are a lot of really good ideas coming in the comments, and yeah, so it's not that we're bypassing them and saying no, no, no. There is a certain amount of like, this has to be, it is your idea, and even though you're going to like write it down and pass it by some other people and see if it resonates with them, it really is rooted in like what is resonating with you, right? Yeah. So I do think there's some confluence of like what's personally appealing to you.
Oh, good. Yeah, this is good.
But then also what's universal. And here's kind of gets to that, go for goofy, but then walk it back towards something that is emotionally relatable, because you want an element of it's being universal. So that's why, Ann's landing on these things of really, I think, things that we're all experiencing right now, of, wrestling with our own isolation and how we want out of this isolation, but how do you connect with other people when getting out of that isolation is impossible, whether that's self-imposed or imposed by someone else.
Like honestly, the co-virus or the COVID is, and I'm sorry to even mention it because good God, we've had enough. But I will say this, that it's the perfect foil to everything, because really, we want to reach out. People are good for us. And if we reach out to those people that we love, we will kill them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, how great is that? So it's the ultimate kind of problem. So the desire is, I want to be with my loved ones. And the ultimate thing is, if I be with my loved ones, I could kill them.
Right.
And that means no loved ones. So it's like a perfect picture of a story where we've taken away any way of getting them what they want.
Right.
So then we have to figure out a different way to get it. Somebody said, I just have to say this. Somebody said she could, maybe, does she have binoculars? Maybe she can see something in the first bag. Absolutely. Can't you see her? Like, I love that. It's perfectly comical. It's a great thing to look at, but it also could be, you know, it could also be a thriller kind of thing. It could also be a very Rear Window kind of thing. And somebody else said, what about the other people in the apartment building? Are they seeing that too? How great would that be? She said, wouldn't it be, it would be a competition. And maybe that's what it becomes. Like at first she's like, I got to get down there because that other person will steal it before I get there.
Right.
I kind of think that's kind of funny too.
Yeah.
And then that can all be built into a character who is, you know, stuck at home without competition. That's a different thing, right?
Right.
That's a really different thing. And we just have to be consistent with who our character is and what they want on so many levels and why they want those things. What was it that led this woman to be agoraphobic? It can be, you know, I don't know much about agoraphobia, but I'm assuming that some people come by it biochemically and some people come by it because of some trauma that happened and they can't leave the house anymore.
Right.
Cognitive behavioral therapy, maybe they can get out of that. So so there is some thoughts about that. And I actually think, truthfully, I sort of think the idea of agoraphobia is low-hanging fruit. I probably wouldn't choose it myself because I would like to have a more dynamic, less slam dunky reason for her to be stuck up there. I would rather it be her own paralyzing shyness, or I would rather it be something else, you know, because agoraphobic feels a little pat, a little convenient.
And like we hear more about it in books than we see in real life.
Yeah. So, but again, like, and I just feel like I have to say this over and over, and please, I get it if you're saying, you know, don't go and listen to this thing. All she ever says is the same damn thing. And that is, the truth of it is that even while I'm doing my edits, I'm thinking to myself, oh, this sentence right here was a funny sentence that did not fit my character.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm full of funny. But a lot of times they don't fit the character and I have to take it out.
Yeah.
You know, we're judging the contests for the Tall Poppy Writers Contest, and I've only read 2 or 3 of them so far. And one of the things that I find is that I don't know what the character wants right away in the story. I know I can see sort of what they are, but I don't know what the story is going to be about. There's a lot of problems. I can see a lot of problems, but I don't know that the author has drilled it down into the central issue. And we want to see that central issue in that first paragraph. And I remember when I was first writing this, you know, first being a writer, and somebody would say, you know, they would say that to me, and I'd think, in the first paragraph, and they're like, the first line, if you can get it in there. And I was like, oh my God. But it's sort of like setting the scene. Like if we're in Elizabethan times, you have to tell me right away so the reader can go, okay, we're in the Elizabethan times. And the same thing goes for want of a character. If we have a person, we have to figure out who they are right away, decide kind of what they want and what's in their way right away, so that I know this story as a reader is going to be about this thing.
Yeah, I want to share this quote that what you said just reminded me of Robert Olin Butler. This book, From Where You Dream, he has some good instruction in this. But he says, I would say that the three fundamentals of fiction, there are 2 that aspiring writers never miss. First, that fiction is about human beings. Second, that it's about human emotion. But then he says, but the third element, which is missing from virtually every student manuscript I've seen, has to do with the phenomenon of desire.
Mm-hmm.
So he's saying exactly what you're saying, which is that, you know, these when we come back to this this list up here of like, you know, who is it about? And then all of this stuff about human emotion, right? Like, why do you care about this? What are you saying? Like, I do think people get a handle on that. They know that, okay, these are some of the emotions that we want to explore in this, and this is our central character. But what doesn't make it a story then is that there's no attention paid to what that person wants. There's not enough of that desire coming through.
Because if you want something, I don't care who you are, you will go for it.
Right.
So think about this for a minute. Think about it. If I really want something, I go for it. Now, I'm a privileged white lady, so I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
But that notwithstanding, if I have to go to the bathroom, I go to the bathroom. If I get hungry, I go get some food. Like if I really want something, I will put on a mask and get in my car and take my hand sanitizer and I will go get it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If I really want to be fit, I will exercise. If I just want fitness as a gift, then I probably won't do it. Mm-hmm. I know this because I've been teaching, you know, that kind of thing for years and years. So I really feel like if you know, people, you remember that book? I've got like all these thoughts in my head right now. Remember that book, He's Just Not That Into You?
Yeah.
Well, the premise of that book was if he wants you, he will let you know. You don't have to guess about it. And that's the same way your character is. If your character wants something, they're going to go for it. And no book is duller than a character that isn't going for whatever it is they want.
Right.
Because there is no action in a book that doesn't have a character going for what they want.
Mm-hmm.
If they're just wandering around aimlessly, we're like, what? You would say that to a sleepover. What do you want? What are you looking for? Somebody opens the fridge and gazes into it. What do you want? Shut the fridge. You know, I don't know what I want. I know you don't. You're not hungry. Go to bed. The book many years ago with what's his name? It's Not About the Bike.
Oh, Lance Armstrong.
Lance Armstrong. He wrote that book. It's not about the bike. You know, because what he was trying to say, it's about. Well, really, what he was trying to say, it's about the drugs. But apparently, what he was trying to say was, it's not about. You know, it's not about the bike. It's about. You know, it doesn't matter what kind of bike you have. It's about the training. It's about the motivation. It's about the frame of mind, right? Well, in this situation, it's not about the bag, you guys. It's not about the bag in the garbage. It's nothing. It's about why our protagonist is either dropping off the bag or why our protagonist is interested in the bag. And what that bag means to that person. Does it mean escape from their lives? Does it mean something that is... Whatever that bag is, it's a symbol of the doorway toward what they want. And you, as a writer, because you're interested in that premise, you get to mine out what is so interesting about that.
Right.
And it's not like, well, it can be this, and then we can have those two fight over the bag, and then we can have the police take the bag, and then they go to the police office. Then it's all about the bag. It's not about the bag.
Mm-hmm.
You have to stay in the character and figure out what that is. And it takes deep thought. Like you could see that Tim and I are like, we don't know. What is it about? Like we would spend this, and I would usually be cussing more. And then I would say some fabulously dirty thing and Tim would laugh. And then I would break into another story about something. And then we'd come back around and I'd go, what about this?
Yeah, right.
And then Tim would make 2 or 3 very funny phrases, and I would use them for the title and the first chapter. And we had this one that we wish we could tell you about, but I'm meeting with my agent on Monday to go through all my book ideas again.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I can tell you guys on Wednesday what happens with that.
Oh, that'll be fun.
I know, that will be fun. Okay, so I need to catch up on the comments here a little bit. So.
Yeah. And so I'll talk about this. Our next questions. We had those first 5 questions that sort of are exploring the premise and who it's about. And really then building the story is about what's standing in their way. Once you get your mind wrapped around, okay, here's what this person wants. And yes, as Marty, as you say, the stated desire may not be the real desire. There's that exactly. There's that it's conscious desire and there's that unconscious desire, which I think for this story so far is working very well. But what's standing in their way and what are they going to get? That's the sort of stuff that's going to help you flesh out what sort of conflicts we have. Because what's a really important point here is that, and Anne, you can kind of share that one story about the MFA with like, you talked last time about how Dear Edward doesn't have just a flood randomly in the middle of it, right?
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. So have I talked about that story yet about the MFA guy?
I don't know. Yeah. Reiterate if you have.
Okay. So I was working with a guy who was writing a story about a man coming back from war and losing the love of his life when he comes back. Because he left, he broke up with her and thinking, I may not come back. And then he let his best friend live in his house and pay his mortgage, and he took off. So when he comes back, the woman is now dating someone else. And his life is not at all what he left it. Like the house is going into foreclosure because his roommate was a loser, and the woman is dating a really yucky guy, but is invested and engaged to him. And he wants more than anything to have sort of a remnant of his life before. And so at first, when we were working together, I was like, this is a really sweet story. And we were really working on how to make this less of a quiet story and more emotionally interesting. Mm-hmm. And so we talked a lot about that. Then he went forward, and I didn't get him again until his very last semester. And then I was working with him again, and he brought the book to me, and I was like, I was reading it again, and I was like, what the heck? There's like a drug deal and a kidnapping in the middle of this. And he's like, they kept telling me my story was too quiet. And I said, and he goes, I had to put more conflict in it. Mm-hmm. And I said to him, I said, we're sitting across from each other. And I said, I said to him, if I reached out and tickled your underarm, what would you do right now? He's like such a shy guy. He was like, you could see he wanted to die. And I was like, right, that's conflict. I made you so uncomfortable by suggesting, not even doing it, that I would reach out and tickle your underarm. Of course, I'm not going to do that. But that's what we want. We want this emotional experience. You don't have to put a car crash in the middle of your book, because the smallest of things are often the things that make us the most uncomfortable. Somebody looking too long in your eyes, someone obviously touching you inappropriately, or someone saying something and pushing you in a way that you've never been pushed before. Right.
And that's going to actually, given the appropriate context, then that's going to be more captivating to read than the car crash.
Much more captivating. It's the same thing I said with the Rolling Zombies. We only care about the Brad Pitt because he told us they showed the happy family and he's so handsome and they're so beautiful together, and we don't want them to be eaten by a zombie.
Right.
We don't care about the 25 other families that just got completely consumed.
Right.
We didn't want us to care. So we didn't. And so we really want to make sure that what we've dialed into is the most emotional and discomfort available for the character without reaching for the low-hanging fruit of a car accident that has nothing to do with the character. Now, if the character grew up and had a terrible car accident in their life,
right,
then dangling a fearful car accident situation in the book makes sense.
Right.
You're just putting stuff in the way because you've seen it in a movie and this happens. It's not very interesting. And I have to say, now I know that I suppose this is definitely a gender reveal when I do this, but I when I was watching Game of Thrones, I just fast forwarded through all the battles. Like, it's not very interesting to me. I'm like, yeah, that guy died, and I hope my guy doesn't die, but there's like 70 more seasons, so he's probably not going to die. So I'm going to fast forward through all this. And then if one of the people dies, I'm like, son of a gun, he died. Oh, well. But if there's some other thing that is much larger than that, that's an emotional thing, that's what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
You know, I'm interested in that piece of it. I
Right.
think that's what's really, I think we all sort of gravitate to that, that
Yeah.
emotional, you know, because we all have that, right?
Right. For sure. So
I
really for this, like the next step would be to figure out, if we figure out for this story, we're going with the agoraphobe or whatever the setback is of the person, the observer, we'll call her.
Yeah,
Right. We're going with the observer, and here's the person leaving the bag. And now it's really going to be all about, okay, well, and I think, we'd want to get our minds wrapped around that a little bit more and get rid of some of the holes, like, why not? Why doesn't she just leave it at the front of her door if it's
right,
for her? Things
right,
like that. But then what's standing in their way? What are they going to get is really what's then creating the rest of the story.
exactly. You know, I want to plug another book that I just finished reading that answers these, it answers some pretty interesting things related to it. So I told you, Tim, about it, and I was just looking for it. I don't know where I put it. It's usually right here, but I read
Nothing to see here.
Nothing to See Here, which
Mhm.
is the story about a woman who takes a nannying job with a bunch of kids who, when they get mad, they burst into flame.
That's what happens to my children
Yes.
3 or 4 times a day now.
4 times a day, right. And so, you know, like this is a premise that can't even be substantiated, right? It doesn't happen.
Right.
Um, and it's just a premise. So the question is, who would take a job with kids who burst into flames? Who is so desperate that they would do that? Why would they do it? Well, he's connected it to a friend of hers from the past, right? And it's got some pretty layered connections in there that are pretty fantastic. It's also super funny. And not only did I giggle all the way through it, not funny like Hardy Har funny, but just like written so well that you can't help but laugh. It's also, I cried a couple of times in that book, and I'm not a crier.
Hmm.
Although I said that I cried in Dear Edward too, so maybe in the COVID I'm a very big crier now. Um, but but when we're talking about these sort of, like Anne here has, more psychologically quirky and intricate is more interesting, right? It is, and you can get away with a lot if you substantiate it. And so the question is, why would this woman do that? And she built it in. I mean, he built in the story about why she would, and you totally buy it. You're like, okay, the kids, they burst into flames. Got it. Okay, and she would do this because of why? Okay, got it. Now tell me the story, and you buy it all the way through. And by the way, it's a very small book for somebody who has to set up the whole premise of pyrotechnic kids, right?
Yeah.
So you should read that book because it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I think what we're saying over and over and over again is that it's not about your premise. It's about your character that intersects with the premise. So you write forward from the character, not the premise. So I feel like if everybody had t-shirts that said, in this group, if we made a t-shirt that said, it's not about the bag, we'd be like a group of just us knowing what that's about.
Yeah.
But we just have to remember that it's not about the premise. It's about the character, what they want, how bad they want it, how much they'll go for it. And like we said, you know, what their greatest desire is, what is their unrealized desire.
Yeah.
And how are we going to make their lives incredibly miserable? Because they want those things, but we're taking them away one way or the other. We're teasing them.
Yeah.
Day in, day out.
So do we, I guess in a couple more minutes here, and then we'll sort of wrap up because we want to keep these relatively short, but do we have ideas about what sorts of things might stand in the way of this observer character in the idea that we've been kicking around?
Well, I think that an inability to find out who's putting the bag out.
Yeah.
So maybe she never sees who do it. Maybe they
Mhm.
do it all the time when at all different times, and she never can catch up, which you could go for a long ways that way.
Yeah.
You know? And I think if we find out who is that character up there, so if I think about who that character is up there, that starts to get more and more interested in what's left down there. What is she missing in her life that she's fairly interested in this essentially a bag of garbage at the bottom of the thing?
Uh-huh.
Like, what is that? So maybe she's afraid. Like, somebody left a novel, like this really weird novel, on my front step. And it was like something from like one of those nurse mysteries that was sort of a bodice ripper slasher from like the 50s or something. And I had this moment where I was like, did someone leave that on purpose? Is that for me? Or is it just a piece of garbage? Like, and so maybe there's a little bit of that. Like, maybe at first she's very afraid.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think I like the idea of, like I'm saying, the agoraphobic is a good idea, but I may not want to spend my whole time writing a book about agoraphobics.
Right.
I mean, you can't just put that in there and not explain the whole thing. And then it's a big thing you have to get over. You're going to have to cure her agoraphobia to write this book.
Right. So
you have to keep that in mind.
And a side note on that, if you're going to write that story, actually, you're going to have to do a lot of research on agoraphobia so that you don't get that horribly wrong, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So I'm not opposed to doing hard work, but right. I also am not. I'm not sure that curing somebody's agoraphobic is what I want to do in a book.
Right.
I'm more interested in why this lone person is interested in the bag and how that draws her out of her life and what she's missing in her life that the bag gives her, even though she doesn't know what's in it.
So, and then how that's going to intersect with the person leaving the stuff from the bag, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and coming back to the original bag, I mean, like, these are all stuff that, and we could invent anything in the bag, but if we did have like the half drunk bottle of wine and some cheese or something like that, like those things that look like picnic items, or, if that bag lady is, and this was, I think, one of your original ideas, she's like having an affair, and this is the evidence from the trysts, and she's, basically throwing them away, but it's good stuff, so she can't bring herself to just put it in the dump. Like, there's something there about like, well, here's this other woman who has an excess of relationships versus the observer who has a deficit.
Oh, that's a good idea.
So I'm not sure exactly how that might play off, but play out. But that could be something where how are the characters foiling one another?
Oh, maybe it's a jealousy thing.
What's that?
Maybe it's a jealousy thing that she's first seen. Like, maybe she has it built in her head the whole time where she's thinking, that woman is having an affair. And look at her with all her stuff. And she's throwing away the wine and God dang it. And maybe I'll figure out who it is. And I'll call the husband, because somebody that has a husband or a partner should not be just willy-nilly throwing I don't have somebody and she's got two.
Right.
So
then it becomes the observer's, seems like she's a do-gooder, but really she wants what this other woman has.
Right. And I kind of like that, because then it makes our person have more agency. And it gives them kind of a edge to them that's also kind of funny, but also a little bit sad. And so, I actually like that best so far. I like that best so far.
And that could be very funny, right?
Yep,
because
super funny.
It's going to be a ridiculous person.
Totally ridiculous. Because then midpoint reversal is she finds out the person isn't married.
Yeah.
The midpoint reversal of the book, she's like, oh shit, I totally got that entirely wrong. 100% wrong. And then it throws her in this other direction, right? See, this is how it happens.
Yeah.
And then I go home and I'm like, that's it. Tim did it. He unlocked it. And then I go running with it because I kind of like that idea. What do you guys think about that? I like that people are like, she hoists the bag up with a
I know. They really are great ideas. And I want to come back to, like, you know, we're not just brushing this aside. But yeah, I think as we said at the beginning of this, Ann and I were sort of nervous to go about this on the one hand, just because it was so unscripted, but on the other hand, it's like, you know, we just spent an hour-long class just like, you know, talking in a very unscripted way, which we would normally feel guilty about, like, well, we want to give them their money's worth and have some beefy instruction and have a list of, like, here's what you need to do, versus just watching us talk through an idea. And yet, I do think, like, this is super important. I think it was Sally asked earlier, do you do this with each novel?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. Like, every story, like, you're constantly going through this sort of, you know, if not with someone else, then with yourself, right?
Yeah, Lisa knows. I have worked and often I'm walking the dog and problem solving people. Samantha knows. I did it with her. We're walking, and we're doing this thing. And some of the novels have been written already, and we're still doing that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. We're just kind of going along and working it out. And here's the thing too, and this is my beef always with NaNoWriMo, and also, which I don't really have a beef with them, but all other people who are saying, I wrote 2,000 words today. I'm like, I didn't write 2,000 words today, but I thought through a premise enough that I think I can really make a book about this.
Yeah.
So I don't have any words on the page, but I did a lot of work. Like, if I use that premise that we talked about today, I could get a lot of work done after this conversation we have.
Right.
So, even though it doesn't have any words on the page at all.
Right. So, and, you know, I mean, I think your mileage may vary, as Chuck Wendig always says. You know, so for some people listening to this, I think, like, you know, this is super valuable. For others, it's like, yeah, of course, I do this all the time. So, you know, I think that's part of why, you know, the logic is to offer this for free, and then, you know, people can kind of, for some people, it'll be like, well, it was worth that, and for others, you know, and for others, it's like, okay, that was super valuable, and that's what I need to do from now on, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So again, won't drill this, but if you're so inclined, you can offer a tip. Those links are there. I think they're in the description of the video as well. And I'll leave that info up. We're set for story structure next week, right? Next Wednesday. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk through story structure and kind of the story structure, the classic structure that you use when you're going from that back cover synopsis to then the whole synopsis that you submitted to your agents, you kind of you basically gave headings on the structural points, right?
Yeah. Oh, yes, I did. All the way through. Yep. Mm-hmm. I did keep, in fact, I wonder if I have that somewhere for I Like You Just Fine When You're Not Around. I'm not sure if I do, but
oh, that'd be fun.
I break it down with the headings, with the story structure. We'll talk about that next time.
Yeah, that'd be cool. And again, with that, you know, I think we'll say this next time, but as I said with the very first one of these we did, it's descriptive rather than prescriptive. It's not the only structure you can use. And there are even, like, sort of multiple variations of the classic structure, but I think it'll be really valuable to see, you know, how you've gone about that and what sorts of points you esteem highly.
Well, yes. And, you know, like, definitely not everyone does. And we always have to say this, right? Not everybody has the same process. Some people can be like, you know, I just can't do it this way. Totally fine. I totally get it.
Exactly.
It's just one way of organized thinking in it. And sort of, since I'm sort of a really weird mix of both creative, but I was a scientist, for me, I sort of have to have some kind of structure or I get really overwhelmed. And so this is my way of imposing a little bit of structure on this idea of art.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll wrap up just by kind of peering at the comments here and seeing if there's other things we've missed as we've been talking through, but
I'm glad that people find it helpful. I worry sometimes that I just stand up here and blather, but so thank you. Thank you for nobody writing, God, this was a waste of time.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for not hating us.
Thank you for not hating us.
There was a sandwich shop when I was like in college, Mildred's in Madison, which is now closed, but it was the best sandwich shop. They had this jar that said "Tipping makes you beautiful," and then they got robbed by gunpoint, and someone stole this enormous tip jar. And when I went back like the next week, they had a new tip jar, same size, and it said, "Not stealing the tip jar makes you beautiful." Which I think about every time there's like, let's lower our expectations. So yeah, not saying I hate you makes you beautiful in the comments.
Beautiful. You makes me love you for not for not saying that you hate me. And if you do, thanks for keeping it to yourself.
Right. So yeah, comment stuff. And I agree. It would be really cool if this, if the bag lever was old. Keep her 70. I think that's definitely very cool.
Yeah, I can really
yeah, let's see. Other questions that you're seeing in the side? Anything else?
Side job acting TV commercials. There's one for baby diapers that looks just like you.
Do I have a side job acting in TV? Gosh, no, I don't.
I used to do one for Hollywood Video.
You did an ad for Hollywood Video?
I was in commercials for Hollywood Video.
Really?
Yeah.
No, Madeline, if you can find that, forward it to me, and I'll see if he's my doppelganger.
Hey.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. And again, you can see the replays of this. Let's see. I have that link someplace. Oh, here it is. You can see the replays of all of that, of what we've done so far. There it is. Blog, stormwritingschool.com, pitch to manuscript. I think that's also in the description of the video. So you can go back and look at the last couple weeks, and you can see this replay. If you've missed any part of it, if you came late, or if you want to look back at anything, then go for it. So yeah, so that's it. And we'll kind of maybe hang out for another minute if there's anything else. But yeah. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you guys next week for story structure. I'm just going to type a comment here.
I love that we allow the comments. It's so good.
Yeah, the interaction is really nice, so that you're not just staring at a screen the whole time. This
is my bright spot of the week, too. It is.
Yeah, it's really great.
Yep, so much fun.
No, Nikki's also seen me on TV. Yeah. I'll have to look this guy up.
Yeah.
The baby diapers. I'm definitely over that for my life. Yeah. It's yeah. All right.
Okay, good.
Well, thank you so much, Ann, and we'll see you next week, and we'll see hopefully all of you, and again, pass the word on, and thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for coming, you guys.
All right.